So I have a short administrative update. We have an action-packed day, so it kind of limits my time with you, but there were some important things that I wanted to make sure that we covered. One is that I am now sending you your written comments from the participant or advocate attorney forms right when they come in. I'm not doing it every 6 months or quarterly or once a year, but I think it makes a bigger impact for you to get them sooner, and then it's something I can just cross off my list or not even have to add to my list. So you should be getting those as they come in. I've also emailed you the trend reports, your feedback reports for the 2017-2018 data. So those are all complete, and you should have all that. And if you read them and you have any questions, your little bedtime reading, it'll put you to sleep, I'm sure, you can just let me know. But there is a lot of interesting things in there, and I plan when I have a few minutes to go through and see if there's some things I want to highlight for you in those trend reports, which is what I usually do today, but I will go through and do that. So DPI has a conference for federal grant recipients every year, and I went to it this year in Green Bay. And I came away, and these handouts are going to be in your folder, with these tools, and they're 2 equity tools. And so in our work, we do a lot of self-assessment, and I thought that these might be helpful tools for you as you do self-assessment. So if you look at the first one, it's called Leading for Equity, and it has some self-assessment points that you can go through and ask yourself if you are actually leading yourself towards equity or thinking about equity or practicing best practices in equity. So the first one of I create a sense of belonging for myself and others. So how do we do that in our work? So I was thinking about that, of how I try to do it. And I thought about the language I use, the tone that I use, and doing self-reflection about am I practicing cultural competency and helping with equity. The second one is I seek out information to understand the diverse perspectives of people. I mean, that's all about our work. And how do we do that? We can do it really through active listening and maybe open-ended questions. So I'd like you just to use these as tools for self-assessment either before a case or after a case. And I think that they could be helpful because they've been helpful for me. The second one is equity decision and policy tools. So it says when our policy programs and efforts affect Wisconsin students, families, communities, and educators. And then through your work, how are you accelerating growth? And what intentional and unintentional consequences on educational equity could result? Well, there could be barriers to accessing dispute resolution. And so instead of breaking down barriers, maybe barriers are being built up. So we always have to be conscious of that because we do work with a lot of different cultures. Have you engaged stakeholders who are members of the communities that are impacted by your work? I think that we try to do that, but I've always thought maybe we need someone that's in between you and me, which are called cultural brokers. Maybe I don't know a lot about a culture. Who can I call upon that's going to help me understand that culture, to help them access our process in the best way possible? So I just really appreciated these tools, and I wanted to share them with you today. And I would encourage you to use them in your work. So the next thing I want to talk about is Wisconsin Act 345, and that act is in your packet. And this is a recently passed act that is about supported decision-making for adult students. This is in lieu of guardianship. So instead of guardianship, students can enter into an agreement with supporters to help them in the decision-making process. And it's there's an agreement and there's a length to that agreement. And so when students are going to make informed decisions about themselves, they turn to their supporters to help them. So under the legislative memo, it talks about the authority of the supporter and that they provide supported decision-making to this adult, but they don't make those decisions. They assist the adult and they help them make appropriate decisions in their life. And I don't think it limits the number of supporters there can be. So we do deal frequently with adult students, and I just this spring had the first adult student who has a supported decision-making agreement. So I think we may see more of it, and so I wanted you to be aware of it.
Because I don't know if it's in here or just buried in the fine print of the law. Does the state define adult as over 18 or over 21?
For our purposes, for the system, it's over 18. And as you know, they can stay in the school system through their 21st birthday year. Okay. And if you read this and you have any questions, you can certainly ask me later. I'm not an expert, though, but I can certainly find out if I don't know the answer. I can find it out. All right, so I have gotten a lot of questions recently about how does the behavior intervention plan, or as we lovingly call it, the BIP, interface with the IEP. So I did some research, and DPI had a bulletin that came out in 2001, which is in your packet, Bulletin 07.01. Oh, does that mean it came out in 2001? 2007, okay. So if you go to number 20 on page 7, how is a behavior intervention plan incorporated into an IEP? And so it explains that there's no required format for a BIP in either federal or state law. Generally, the plan to address behavior can be included in the IEP, and then it lists the way that it can. We deal with these all the time because a lot of the students that we're seeing are having behavior problems. So I think that this will be really helpful. There's other points in this bulletin that could be helpful, but this is the one that I really wanted to point out. So I would read through these 3 ways that BIPs can possibly be included in the IEP, and then you can always ask me or Christina or Nissan or someone if you have any questions about that. And then finally, there's a handout from Birth to 3 on some updates that Lori wanted you all to have. The first is about their state systematic improvement plan, where they're trying to increase children's social and emotional development. That you can read about that, and it talks about over the past 5 years. And then continued public awareness about dispute resolution and the rights of parents. They talk about the different divisions in the of services and the programs, and then how those programs all have access to dispute resolution. So as many of you know, I'm the administrator for that system, and you all are on the roster and have the option to take those cases. We don't see a lot of cases, but I just want to be aware of it, and we need to keep you updated on that system.